With these various YouTube episodes, I won't be going into creative systems theory and its multiple patterning concepts, at least in any detail. For that, you can turn to my books, in particular the book Creative Systems Theory or some of the longer articles on the Cultural Maturity blog. But a few particular insights from the theory help highlight the power of the kind of understanding that becomes possible with cultural maturity's cognitive reordering. For many people watching these episodes, these further reflections won't be of great interest, but others may find them of particular value. One especially striking outcome with cultural maturity's cognitive changes is how the kind of thinking that results often reconciles quandaries that are impossible to address, limited to the assumptions of times past. For example, in these episodes, you'll encounter how it helps us understand science and religion in more encompassing ways. Here I will touch briefly on how it can help address one of traditional philosophy's most intractable quandaries, the apparent contradiction between the experience of free will and what would seem a deterministic universe. We can miss how deeply the question of free will challenges usual understanding. You would not be listening to this episode, and I would not have recorded it if we did not believe in free will in some form. Yet, basic cause and effect, at least as classical science conceives of it, describes a deterministic world. Free will and determinism each seem self-evident, but as we conventionally think of them, they imply mutually exclusive realities. The key to understanding how such apparent contradiction might be reconciled lies with the recognition that the way we view will and determination are each directly tied to modern age assumptions, in particular assumptions about the relationship of mind and body. We've conceived of mind and body as separate. We've also seen each of them functioning according to the rules of mechanistic cause and effect. In this world, awareness is captain of the cellular ship, free and unfettered, and the body, as anatomy and physiology, functions according to basic engineering principles. Free will and determinism each have their own separate and rationally understandable worlds. With cultural maturity's changes, we find a picture that is more systemic, more of a whole, one in which mind and body are not separate in the same sense. We also find a picture in which mind and body each function according to more dynamic principles. Here we see that while awareness helps facilitate possibility, by itself it doesn't determine it. We also see that this is rather a good thing, indeed that it is necessary to our strikingly innovative natures. And at the same time, we step beyond thinking of the life of the body only in mechanistic terms. We find a more living picture all the way around. The fact that a larger picture might exist is more a part of our experience than we might imagine. Few truths become more obvious when practicing the craft of the psychotherapist, for example, than how different the reality of conscious awareness is from how the conscious mind tends to view itself. Comic Emo Phillips once quipped, "I used to think the brain was the most important organ in the body, until I realized who was telling me that." The fact that conscious awareness is limited in what it can grasp is exactly as it should be. Much of our functioning works best without volition's interference. Recall Rudyard Kipling's centipede, who walks gracefully with its 100 legs until praised for her exquisite memory. And increasingly a more systemic picture is coming to permeate the best of thinking about the body in biology and medicine. As we learn more deeply about the complex working of the endocrine system, for example, or of connections between the gut and cognitive functioning, we find not a mechanical body, but a living body, and more than this, a body that is in important ways intelligent. We can also get there simply by reflecting on everyday experience. As far as a more creative picture of awareness, I think of my own experience as a writer. I get a lot of my best ideas when on road trips while driving along a mountain pass or along the ocean. Insights often come unbidden. Sometimes these ideas relate to topics where I'd not even before been thinking about. Certainly, they are not a product of will as we conventionally think of it. In a similar way, some of my best insights wake me up in the middle of the night. A simple thought experiment helps fill out the body aspect of this systemic picture. Imagine a gifted running back in football making his way down the field, rapidly cutting this way and that. Research shows that the running back's cuts take place more quickly and in ways that are more nuanced than could ever happen by consciously choosing them one at a time. The conscious aspects of awareness simply aren't built to function that rapidly or complexly. Does this mean then that the running back is not choosing? And more specifically, does it mean that because his body moves before he chooses, that what we witness is nothing more than mechanical reflex following the rules of a deterministic world? Such conclusions leave us with a less than compelling picture. At the least, they leave us with bothersome questions. Are the outcomes of games then predetermined, or alternatively perhaps random? Either way, we're left wondering why we would attend a football game and perhaps feeling a bit duped. In fact, I think it is the explanation that is ultimately silly. Clearly, in the running back's movements, we witness something that is not just vital, but profoundly so. Culturally mature perspective provides a more conceptually demanding but also ultimately simpler interpretation when it comes both to conscious awareness and the life of the body. It starts with the recognition that more sophisticated ways of thinking about a conscious awareness and about the body are not just possible but predicted. I've described how cultural maturity's changes involve not just changes in what we think, but fundamental changes in how we think, specific cognitive changes. With integrative meta-perspective, we both more fully step back from and more deeply engage the whole of our cognitive complexity. We become able to more consciously engage all of intelligence's multiple aspects and do so in more integrated ways. These changes alter not just how we think about intelligence, but also how we think about awareness. Traditionally, we have thought of conscious awareness as who we are. In his classic book, Man and His Symbols, psychiatrist Carl Jung challenged our modern age interpretation back in the middle of the last century with these words. Where there is a will, there is a way is the superstition of modern man. He went on to observe that what we commonly call self-knowledge is a very limited kind of knowledge. Integrative meta-perspective makes clear that thinking of free will as free and willful in the unfettered sense implied by our modern age picture leaves us short. Indeed, in the end, this now outdated way of thinking translates into but another kind of determinism. It is just that with this kind of determinism, it gets to be us who does the determining. Cultural maturity's cognitive reordering presents a more challenging, but also more complete picture. Conscious awareness comes to have a new, at once more humble and ultimately profound role. Rather than determining our actions, it serves as a facilitator and catalyst for intelligence's richly dynamic workings. As far as the body, integrative meta-perspective offers an expressly more dynamic picture of what it means to be embodied. We come to see the body not as a separate machine, but as an integral part of who we are as living and specifically human beings. We appreciate how body sensibilities represent one part of intelligence's larger complexity. Is it not obvious that what we so delight in that running back's movements, is intelligent? Culturally mature perspective's more sophisticated vantage alerts us to the fact that the way we viewed the free will versus determinism debate in modern times has been a product of a developmentally appropriate but systemically incomplete view of the world. In the end, it has been based on a falsely framed dichotomy, a juxtaposing of alternative determinisms, neither of which ultimately holds up. Each determinism has served in a similar way to protect us, as polar explanations of every sort do, from life's ultimately rich but also easily overwhelming uncertainties and complexities. And as with other polarized explanations, today each equally leaves us short. Integrative meta-perspective reveals that the will is not so free, nor as much ours to direct as those of an individualistic bent might prefer. And neither is determination as determined, as advocates of either a more scientific determinism or the determinisms of religious faith might wish. This more complex picture makes outcomes less readily determined, but the particular way that it does makes the result ultimately more significant. The complexity that we encounter is of the generative sort that makes existence vital and life an option. Such complexity is ordered deeply, but this is not the order of one thing guaranteeing another, and at its best it is the order of creative possibility. In human life, this creative picture takes particularly explicit expression. When we add creative systems theory patterning notions, even at this basic level, what I describe is not so simple. And getting beyond eternal quandaries requires a particular stretch. But hopefully at least a bit I've been able to articulate how the result fits with the idea that the task ahead in the end is common sense. Again, your questions and reflections appreciated.